Well, I think cheetahs are the most amazing animal there is in the world. And after spending about 40 years of my life studying them, figuring out what we're going to do to actually save them, it's a delight to be here with all of you and so many friends here in the audience. Staff, past volunteers, board members, friends, who all care a lot about where the cheetah's going. The cheetah has a chance. Really looking at living with the cheetah and how can humans actually and wildlife flourish together. We do think that we've got something that is going to make it work. If I can make this thing work, I'll be good.
All right.
I'm on the right, I'm not upside down.
Press the right hand.
You all know that cheetahs are the fastest of all land animals, and they are the most amazing species. But every part about the cheetah is built for speed, from the aerodynamic build to the enlarged arteries and lungs and heart to make them be able to run so fast. But actually figuring out if they're fast enough to, I guess, extinction is going to be the big thing. Now, cheetahs play a really key role in our ecosystem. So although they're fast and they're beautiful and they're an icon of speed, they actually play a role in how we, in our healthy ecosystems, work. They maintain grasslands. And the grasslands are an important part of keeping all of us alive. And with that, the cheetah helps feed not only all the other species that feed off of what it kills, they actually help us all live in a healthy ecosystem as well. So top predators are really important. I started working with cheetahs back in the early 70s, and I was young, and I had no idea that my life in 40 years was actually going to be saving the cheetah. Who would ever have thought that? I had worked at a wildlife park in Oregon, and from that ended up being fascinated by cheetahs. And in the early 1970s, I was one of the few people who had cheetahs in captivity and was breeding them, and this cheetah named Cayenne came into my life. And my job was to actually take her back to Africa and teach her how to hunt. Well, back out in the 1970s, zoos thought that we were going to breed animals in captivity and take them back to the wild. And I always say it's sort of born free, and I always hear that music sort of going on. And so there I was in my early 20s, and Cayenne and I went back to Namibia, where her parents had come from, and I actually did teach her how to hunt. But what I found out was that farmers were killing cheetahs like flies, and that really what we needed to do is to save the wild cheetah. Cheetahs are at risk. We've got human-wildlife conflict, there's habitat loss. Today there's illegal wildlife trade. And in the last 40 years, we've lost about 20 countries where the cheetahs were living. Today, the cheetahs are found in small, fragmented populations. We only have about 10,000 of them left. They also are a species that have a really reduced genetic variation. And that was a lot of my early research in the 1980s. Giving you an idea where the cheetahs are found, and I always think maps are important. The dark brown areas are where cheetahs are found today, and the light brown areas where cheetahs were found 100 years ago. We've lost about 90% of all the cheetahs throughout their range in the last 100 years. I live now in the country called Namibia, which is where the arrow goes to, where our center is. But the cheetah is faced with a lot of problems. Although there are a lot of game reserves throughout all of Africa, there are only about 10 reserves large enough that are really maintaining a viable population of cheetahs. With 10,000 cheetahs left, the majority of them, 90%, are found outside of protected areas. Competition with lions and hyenas and push them out, then they're pushed out into competition with humans and their livestock. And when livestock farmers lose their livestock, what do you think a good livestock farmer does? They go out and kill a predator. And the cheetahs have been killed in very high numbers. A big problem also, as I mentioned, was that of illegal trade these days. And these are the issues that we're faced with. And this is what Cheetah Conservation Fund deals with throughout its range. We have a vision. And as an organization, you have to have a vision. And my vision will continue forever. And I want everyone to see this vision as well. We see a world in which cheetahs can live and flourish in coexistence with people and the environment. That means that, no, we don't just fence animals in a game reserve, but it's a way that we can actually live together in harmony. And I think the cheetah has allowed us to think outside of square boxes in figuring out ways that we can actually live together. We have to if we're going to save the species. Some of you don't know what we are. Well, we are a sanctuary for orphan cheetahs. We've got about 44 of them there right now. We've got a veterinary clinic, a genetics lab, we're a training facility. We're open to the public. We're one of the few places that welcomes people to come and learn about what we do. We're actually the leading organization in the world dedicated to saving the cheetah. There's a lot of rhino people and tiger people and elephant people, but we're really the only cheetah organization there is in the world. We're a model farm. And so instead of fighting the farmers and saying, oh, don't do this, we actually bought into the whole thing. I'm a farmer from my early life and grew up on I had goats and I was a goat farmer and rode horses. So I said, okay, I can farm too here in Namibia, and we've got 100,000 acres of ranch, where we actually, in Namibia, is where the last large remaining population remains. I set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund in 1990. And what's it like to actually set up a foundation? Well, I didn't really know what that meant when I did it in 1990. But now, almost 25 years later, I can tell you, would I have done it 25 years ago again if I knew what I did today? I think I would. And many of the people that are in the room here and my friends around the world who are part of this, I think would continue helping say yes. When I moved to Namibia, I got my Land Rover in 1990. Of course, everyone gets a Land Rover. My Land Rover still lives. It's old. It's had a few different colors. But I traveled around the country. And Namibia is a country coming from California. It's 2.5 times the size of California. So it's a big, arid country. And having my Land Rover, I went door to door and I talked to farmers. And really what I wanted to know was, why were farmers killing cheetahs? And in the 1980s, they had killed like 10,000 cheetahs. Every year, about 1,000 cheetahs, farmers were killing them. They'd catch them in cage traps, and once they caught them in a cage trap, they usually shot them, and they didn't really know what they were doing. And I needed to find out, was it because they were actually catching their livestock, or was there a perceived threat? And what did they know about the cheetah? So I really wanted to share with them about the cheetah. And yet many of the people I met with sort of looked at me and said, that's my livestock, I'm pretty poor. Really, what's the value of conservation? Who are you? What are you doing? Why is it that you want to save this animal? I like my livestock. I said, well, I like my livestock too. And I can help you not lose your livestock if we can learn more about them. And so our whole program really revolves around sort of these understandings of the challenges facing them. The cheetah does lack genetic diversity, and so with that we had to understand more about the basic biology of the cheetah, and then understanding the education and how to reduce the conflict, and really dealing with some of the illegal trade that's going on, and then looking at livelihoods. If you're poor, do you really care about cheetahs living on the earth? Do you care about rhinos or elephants or really anything? You just really want to figure out about how to care for yourself. So these are kind of the 3 legs that we work with. We've got a very large research area. The red points are where all the cheetahs that we were caught, that we were able to work on and collect biological samples. All the black dots that are in there are all where we went door to door and talked to farmers. Your neighbor is like 45 minutes away. So all these farms are huge, and getting the kind of information that we did was amazing. And then pulling that out into that section over to the side is really where all of our radio telemetry points were. So we started understanding how the cheetah was moving on the farmlands. And everything that we dealt with was really opportunistic. And as farmers caught cheetahs, we would collect blood samples, and we'd look at fecal samples, which we call, as biologists, black gold, poop, okay. And we'd look at dead cheetahs as well. And we learned a lot about the cheetah over all these different years. Our biomedical database is one of the largest in the world for an endangered species. We've worked on over 900 cheetahs, and the amount of information that we have on a healthy free-ranging animal is incredible. And these samples then are stored very diligently in what we call a resource a genome resource bank. On a very big picture, though, what are we looking at Saving the Cheetah? It's looking at large landscapes on a scale that people haven't really dealt with that much. It's not like buying a small farm and saying, we're going to save cheetahs. It's looking at a place like Namibia that's huge, where cheetahs are covering 1,500, 2,000 square kilometers in their movements. And then looking at that next to the cheetahs throughout Botswana and Zimbabwe, up into East Africa and North and West Africa. These areas are full of humans as well. So our research then started leading us into the conservation aspects of what we really need to do. I cannot tell you how important it is to protect our wild populations. So everything that we do is to look at keeping cheetahs living free and in the wild. Although there are a lot of different things that are involved in keeping cheetahs free and in the wild, sometimes even keeping them in captivity. As I'd mentioned, we do have orphans, and over the years, farmers would quit catching cheetahs or killing cheetahs, but often we'd get orphans, and you'd get an orphan in that was 10 days old, 3 weeks old, 8 months old. But they can't live without their mom until they're about 18 to 22 months of age, and so we have to take care of them. And when we take care of them, we don't put them in the chicken coop that we got them from. And oftentimes, the Ministry of Environment and Tourism would confiscate the animals, give them to us, and then we've had to build enclosures. We've got several hundred acres dedicated into caring for the animals that we have. And we've helped change policies. A captive cheetah in Namibia can only be in a facility of 1 hectare per cheetah. And feeding the animals correctly. We pride ourselves on the fact that we are the best practice facility for cheetahs in the world. We've looked at disease and stress factors and using the cheetahs that are there, because they can't breed, into learning more about reproductive successes. And we've been able to bank sperm in our genome resource bank. We've actually been able to even take embryos and make blastocyst stage embryos and freeze them again in our genome resource bank. So we work very actively on an ongoing research project. We have a research center, an education center, which is a museum, and our day visitor center. And unfortunately, in October, we had a horrible thing that happened to us. We had dry lightning strike in an arid environment where you don't get fire, but you all probably know the song, Great Balls of Fire. Well, they hit us. And our signature building actually went up in flames. And I was in Canada lecturing, and I got this phone call and said, oh my God, the place is on fire. And our staff, in about an hour's period of time, were able to clear as much out as possible. This is our classroom where we taught thousands of Namibian farmers and school children. And over just a very short period of time, it was gone. So this is what I came home to at the end of October and said, now what are we going to do? Fortunately, we were insured, but our insurance only covers about 2/3 of what the new building is going to cost. We've now developed what it is that we're going to look at, and this is the overview of what it's going to look like. We're not going to have a thatch roof. We're actually, on this big flat roof, we're going to look at having solar panels. And with this, we're in the middle of nowhere, so we have generators that power us. We do have solar power, but we're going to have more solar power so that we'll be able to get off our generators as well. We're going to have a classroom, which is what we lost. This is also where our gift shop and our little cafe was. And when you visit us again, instead of seeing that big, lovely thatch roof, you're going to look something like this that welcomes you in. And so this right now is what our concept is looking at. And we've just gotten our bids at this right now, and we're hoping to rebuild in the next month going forward, but it's probably going to take us about 6 months to rebuild. School children started coming immediately, and our staff made everything work. However, we do have a big hole in where we are working, but it's just amazing. We get about 2,000 school children from Namibia that visit us each year. We get about 6,000 to 7,000 public that visit us each year. So we do need to rebuild to make ourselves look pretty again and have a place that we can be functional. Again, just coming back to the fact that keeping cheetahs living free in the wild is very important. And the cheetahs that we do work with and are able to go in the wild, we've had long-term studies, many of them with radio collars. We've put over 600 cheetahs back out into the wild. These days we use satellite collars. And this is a cheetah with a satellite collar on. They're wonderful. I can sit here right now and collect data on where the cheetahs are. And we've got multiple cats with collars on right now. Many of these are cats that we're putting through a rehabilitation program. These collars, though, all cost about $5,000 each. They have a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years. So we continually put these collars on. We've got 3 cats with them on right now, and I have another 4 cats that are ready to go out in the wild within the next couple months. I'm just trying to get another 4 collars. Giving you an idea on what cheetahs look like in their home ranges. Like I'm going to go to that red box that's sort of in the middle. That's sort of my favorite one right there, which is a lovely home range for a cheetah from a radio collar. That's covering about 10 farms, or 20 farms. Each of those farms is about 10,000 acres. And so cheetahs are covering these huge home ranges. As I said, averaging about 1,500 square kilometers. Mati Nakembwa, who's in the picture up there, is our chief ecologist. He's Namibian. We've trained lots and lots of Namibians, like close to 100 biologists. They're with us for 6 months. And Mati's been with us for over 15 years, and he does most of our training of the Namibians. Right now, we've got camera traps out, and the grid that's there with those pictures are cheetahs taking their own pictures, the camera traps, and it's allowed us to come up with the density of how cheetahs are living on these farmlands. About 4 cheetahs per 1,000 square kilometers. They live in very large areas in a very low number. So our ongoing research has allowed us to understand more about how cheetahs are living. The systems of how cheetahs are living, cheetahs, females cover multiple males. And males live in what are called coalitions. Brothers stay together their entire lives. And females are covering multiple males. And we've found with our genetic work is that they live in a matriarchal society. So the female cubs stay within those same areas. And so there's a lot of communication that goes on out in these large, large home ranges. We do a lot to figure out how to find out more about cheetahs. So when there's so few out there, it's kind of like finding needles in haystacks. And so we want to find out more about them. And we, instead of just getting blood samples, unfortunately the farmers have quit catching so many cheetahs, we've now gone and tried to find scat, which again I'm going to call black gold. And we employ ecologists, which have 4 feet. You might call them dogs. We call them ecologists. So we've got Finn, who's a border collie, and he's showing us where scat is. And Tiger is a Springer Spaniel, and he's being taken care of by his ecologist team member, Stephanie. And Isha, who is sitting after finding the scat, because she's indicating the fact that it's there, are some of the scat dogs, and they're detection dogs that work with us out in the field. And as we find more scat, we can find out more about the genetic makeup of the population. We can use the scat actually to find out more about the hair and the hormones, about what's going on with the population. So these are just some of the things that we do. And as we find that scat and it comes back into our genetics DNA lab, we can match that scat and who that animal is and find out more about who it is and who's related to. And then compare that to some of the pictures that we take from the camera traps. So this is kind of the prime picture here of 2 cats and understanding who their scat is. And the nice genetic picture up there from our multiplexes show that they are different cheetahs. The top cheetah picture looks different than the other 3. And that's what we spend a lot of our time on in our genetics lab. And that's Anne Schmidt-Kunzel, who's our geneticist, as well as Fabiano, who just finished his PhD in genetics. He's the first PhD in Namibia on genetics, and we're very proud of him. He's worked with us for over 10 years, and he too is an amazing teacher, and will be teaching people from throughout Africa over many years. Can we make a change? I think we can continue to make a change, and it's going to be through what I call Future Farmers of Africa, teaching about good livestock management and teaching them how to care for their livestock. Adding value to the livestock that's there by, like, making goat cheese. If you make goat cheese, you've got goats and they're milking and you've got good health out of them, you can make ice cream and all kinds of great things like fudge. Education of youth is continually important, and we can't educate enough of them. Throughout Africa today, we have a huge population of which 50% of our youth in Africa is under 25 years of age. And if you can see the impact that that's going to make in Africa and the world, it's pretty scary, and so education is critical. We breed and raise livestock guarding dogs, and these are, I think, one of the most amazing species, and dogs are man's best friend, and there's a reason why. It's because they're smarter than us, and they've picked us to be their pets. And these dogs come from Turkey, and they are both Kangal and Anatolian Shepherds, and they've been used for about 5,000 years to protect livestock. They grow up with the livestock, they bark loudly, they tell predators, this is my flock, and predators actually stay away. We put dogs throughout Namibia. We've bred and placed over 500 of the dogs. And the dogs not only take care of the livestock, but they allow these kids that are usually the herders on the farmlands to be able to go to schools. And so the dogs play a very important role as well. This is our new creamery that we've just opened, and the team, and we call it Dancing Goat Creamery because our goats and our livestock are protected by our livestock guarding dogs. And so the goats can dance, and we can be happy because the cheetahs are all being taken care of. And in the name of the cheetahs and the livestock guarding dogs protect the flocks against other predators, leopards, the caracal, the jackal. And our programs really revolve around not just saving the cheetah, but learning how to live with predators on the landscape. We've got amazing models, I think, and Namibia is a model for the rest of the world, and realizing that people can live with wildlife. And our conservancies in the country are really important. We're a part of the Greater Waterberg Conservancy, and the Waterberg Plateau Park is right behind our landscape. And within that big circle that I put there, which is about 2 million acres, is called Herero land. And the Herero-speaking people are one of our tribes in the area. They're very poor. They live in a subsistence lifestyle with livestock. There's very few wildlife numbers, although there's cheetahs going through, there's wild dogs, there are rhino, all very critically endangered animals, and yet this team of people might be one of the futures for the cheetah. And we're working in this Greater Waterberg landscape area and trying to integrate it over from strictly livestock into an integrated program of livestock and wildlife and changing the incomes of the people. So habitats and prey are very, very critical to the cheetah. We have, though, thickened thorn bush that's taken over a lot of our land. Thorn bush takes over because you overgraze arid landscapes. And what happens, you can get sand in some areas. Other areas, you get thorns that grow, and they take up more and more of the water, which is a form of desertification. We've lost about a third of to a half of our land through this, and it's affected our economy about $100 million US dollars per year, but it's also changed the biodiversity of our land. These thorns actually, and imagine a cheetah going 50 to 70 miles per hour through this thickened thorn bush, which used to be an open savanna land. And what happens, oftentimes they scratch their eyes. Those scratched-eyed animals might become a livestock catching animal, which causes them to have problems with farmers, and yet what we really need to do is make a new habitat. So we started a habitat restoration program about 15 years ago, and we looked at biodiversity studies, started to harvest, figured out that we could actually put lots of people to work in harvesting bush and then making something out of this, and what we've made is a little fuel log, and it's called bush block. And our bush block also happens to have an eco-label on it, which is called Forest Stewardship Council certification. That means our whole organization is actually working in such a way that we are taking good care and conservation-wise, caring for all the areas of not only the habitat we're working on, the forest, but our employees and the biodiversity on the land. And I think that consumers can be very much more active if we started looking at some of these eco-labels. And Certified Friendly, Wildlife Friendly is an eco-label that we've worked on trying to develop. And we're trying to get consumers to see that they can actually, through their buying power, help wildlife species habitat restoration. Just to kind of talk for a second on what's happening with illegal poaching and the illegal trade. And right now here in the UK are some very big meetings going on this week about much of the poaching and trade that's going on. But most people don't think that much about the illegal trade of pet trade. And cheetahs actually are going into the pet trade. They're an amazing animal. They don't breed well in captivity. They're being caught from the northern parts of Kenya into Somaliland, Ethiopia. And for every one cheetah that actually makes it into the pet trade, we probably are losing at least 5. And these cubs that are getting into the pet trade, if they have a lifespan of 5 months, we're really lucky. If they make it over that 5-month period of time, they probably won't live more than 2 years because the people where they're going don't know that much about how to care for them. And it's very, very critical because they're coming from the wild. The mothers are being killed. It's just horrible. And these populations are very small of where they're coming out of and very, very extremely endangered areas. And so they're captured and they die after being sold. And this issue is what we're trying to bring a lot of awareness to these days as well. I've just come back from the UAE a couple days ago, really, and we went over there and have been going there for the last 6 months earlier, a few months before that, and trying to actually, instead of saying, hey, you can't have cheetahs, because many of them do, is to try to start working with these private collections, and many of the sheikhs have them, and teaching them more about the proper care of the animals. We went over there and we banked sperm on these very rare animals. The first sperm that's been banked from some of these animals from the northern parts of Africa. Once this sperm is banked, we can use it potentially in the future, but we're saving genes from them. So this was actually the team that went over, Anne and Ryan, and we banked the cheetahs down. We worked on about 18 of the most rare animals there are, and trained over 35 staff members in 4 different major facilities. I'm hooked. I mean, how could you look at those eyes and not do something? And Jonathan and Angie, you guys are so lucky that you've been able to see the cheetahs where they live and know so much about how they're living. And how do we tell those stories? Through pictures, through the stories that you've done in Big Cat Diary, and to have people like you come and meet us and hear what we think and how we care about these animals. How can we save them? Because they're in our hands. The issues that we're facing right now for the cheetah are not somebody else's issues. They're our issues. They're in humans' hands, and we can make a difference. After 40 years of my life working with cheetahs, I know that I don't want anyone to live on Earth without knowing a cheetah. We want to keep them living in the wild, and that's the most important thing that we can do. This is Chewbacca, and I was imprinted by him for 16 years. He came to me as an orphan at 10 days of age, and I can't believe what he taught me. And in the 16 years that he was able to be my friend and walk with me out in the bush, he met thousands and thousands of farmers and international people and school children. And he imprinted, I think, the world on the fact that we want to save this species. He passed away a couple years ago, but he will be with us forever because, to me, he tells a story. And Chewbacca is, from Star Wars, and we all think about Star Wars. And when I named him in Namibia, I thought, nobody would ever know what a Chewbacca is. And how do you tell a Namibian what a 6-foot fuzzy Wookiee is? It's all red hair. And I said, well, it's this thing that kind of flies the spaceship. But this is Chewbacca, and he is flying the most important spaceship we have, and that's our Earth. And so I've always thought of him as the guide, the leader, the star, and my best friend. And all I can do is continue to tell the stories that we want to have cheetahs on Earth. You're going to get to listen to Jonathan and Angie next, who are dear, dear friends, are patrons of the UK and for the Cheetah Conservation Fund. Friends who have been able to tell the stories of these big cats to people everywhere in the world. So very lucky to be able to share those stories. And yet, for every animal that you get to see, the heart wrenching that it does when you know those cats and you know the stories about them. I've gotten to know Jonathan and Angie for many, many years, have visited us in Namibia multiple times. I've been with them, and they've saved my life in their home in Kenya a few times. And I just am delighted to be able to introduce them to you this evening, to be able to share their stories as well of living with the big cats and the cheetahs that they've been able to live with, and share their stories with all of us. So thank you, Jonathan and Angie. Oh, do you want mine?
No, I've got the one behind. Where did Keith go? I think he's got the handheld mic. Is that true? I have. Ah, good. I'll try and keep this the right way up this time. I managed to send the pictures backwards. Thank you. Is it going to be a problem if the lights go down a bit more, or do you like them at this level? That's fine. Yeah, they can go down. Can they come down a bit? Can we bring the lights down a little bit? And this